Hi, Govind here. Before we dive in, I want to let you know that you're listening to a special edition of Paper Napkin Wisdom, the Freedom Framework series built around a new book by Michael Walsh. In this series, Michael and I explore what it really takes to build a business that works for you, not the other way around. We're talking about freedom in your business, freedom from your business, and freedom because of your business. We'll talk about what each of those things mean. Each episode brings you tools, insights, and in-depth conversation between Michael and I about how to bring this kind of freedom into your life. If you're ready to design a business that you don't need to escape from, you're in the right place. Listen in.
Welcome to Paper Napkin Wisdom, where we share pearls of wisdom shared by some of the world's top entrepreneurs, leaders, and difference makers. Here's your host, Govind Jayaraman.
Hi, I'm Govind Jayaraman, and this is Paper Napkin Wisdom, episode 280 and part 14 of our Freedom by Design series with none other than Michael Walsh. If you're the kind of leader who measures progress in quarters, sprints, and scorecards, you're in the right place. On this show, we distill big, business-shifting ideas onto a simple napkin so you can see the lever, pull it, and watch performance move. Today, Michael brings a sketch that suggests there's more than one path to results, and one path reliably compounds. As you listen, you may start to notice how a small shift in where you invest attention creates outsized returns in execution, capacity, and predictability. When that happens, you can begin installing the kind of operating rhythm that turns individual effort into scalable, repeatable outcomes. Michael is a business growth strategist and the architect behind Freedom by Design, his new book release. He's helped leaders like you translate ambition into systems that endure. And in this conversation, he'll point to leverage you already have so your numbers start telling a better story. So, as always, I'll ask you to grab a napkin, capture the one idea you'll test this week, and share it with the hashtag #PaperNapkinWisdom, because when we share what works, everyone's results improve. Let's dive in. Michael Walsh, welcome back to Paper Napkin Wisdom. We are in our ongoing series, and I think this series is really about your framework. You call it the Freedom Framework. And what I think is really powerful about the Freedom Framework is it's really meeting entrepreneurs and business owners where they really are in terms of what they want from their business. Freedom in their business to do what they want. Freedom from their business so they can go away and have a vacation. It took me 15 years to take my first vacation. And when I say that to people, they make that same expression on their face that you just did. And then it's a mixture of humor and, whoa, you're really slow. And then the final one is freedom because of the business, right? Freedom to enjoy your life because of this business that you've grown. And in doing that, we began sort of discussing the danger zones of the business. And spoiler alert, the danger zones and these sort of hidden things that are going on in the business usually relate to people, because people are the greatest success and the greatest danger as we grow an organization. And this understanding that we have to rethink the core of the business away from being a well-oiled machine and toward being an intelligent ecosystem that supports the team as part of the core and their personal and professional development. So we talked in our last episode about developing managers, and also the craziness that word even exists still, because this idea of managing people is just so industrial revolution, cog in the machine thing, but it is the word. So developing your managers into being more than that. And then now we're going to talk about developing leaders. Now, people in the world interchangeably use these words.
Yes.
Right? You have differentiated between them intentionally. Why?
Because they're different.
Wow. Profound. A typical Michael Walsh profound moment. Everybody write that down. That's what you put on your paper napkin.
So if your question is how are they different, I'd be happy to answer that question.
All right. So
Okay.
how are they different, Michael Walsh?
Oh, good question. Funny you should ask. The management, I love Marcus Buckingham's definitions because basically what he says is management's about taking talent and turning it into performance. And leadership is about rallying people to a brighter future. And, so one is about, I guess one of the ways I heard management and leadership described is if you have a roofing company, a manager will actually make sure that all the component parts are there, the right people are on the roof at the right time, and that they lay out that whatever the first layer is, and then they get the next layer, and then they have the proper setting and drying time and all that stuff, and that the roof is actually constructed properly, on top of this building. And leaders' job is to make sure you're on the right building.
Yeah.
Now, so there's that from a strategic perspective. However, to rally people to a brighter future is really more about inspiration. Okay. And management is about supporting physical delivery, is the way I look at it. Because if you can take the combined talents of different people and turn them into orchestrated collective performance, that really is an art by itself. And it gets, of course, more interesting when you're dealing with a service-based business. And of course, that's what we're playing with is a service-based business that's based in the expertise of the people in the company.
And I think this is where a lot of people really muck up as the organization grows and how we grow people, people into managers, the team into managers, and the managers into leaders. We forget how different those roles are. In the last episode, we really dove into the difference between, high performing, skilled people within the job, people who are responsible for delivering results, and then just elevating the best of those people into manager roles is, a trap that a lot of people get into, right? So and a lot of organizations sort of continue to get into. What this is similar, because again, just as much as that role is significantly different, supporting people to get results is different than getting results yourself.
Yeah.
Supporting a manager whose job is not only to support people to get results, but also individually deliver results in addition to that, which could mean covering for people, filling in blank spots, all that kind of stuff, is again another leap forward. It's another job. It's a different role altogether, correct?
So is leadership a different job than management? Yes. Is what you just said summarized where I go with it?
No, that's not what I was trying to say.
But here's what I would say. Clearly, we haven't scripted this in advance.
Yes.
Because I always come up with some different idea anyway.
All right.
So here's the thing. I actually almost didn't write the chapter on leadership.
Really?
Yeah. You know how much is out there on leadership?
Yeah, there's a lot.
There's a ton of stuff out there on leadership. And how many checklists have you seen as the attributes of a great leader?
A bajillion.
And if you go on LinkedIn, you'll see at least 5 every time you sit down. If you go through 50 things, there'll be at least 2 or 3. And if you go through 100, there's no question you'll see 5 or 6. I mean, there's always, these are the attributes of a great leader. And frankly, I have yet to meet one single great leader or any leader who has all those attributes. I haven't even met one that has half the attributes. So leaders only have one thing in common with each other. And I suspect you know what that is.
Title.
Followers.
Well, and the title.
And what? Say that again.
The title.
The title. Well, yeah. Well, sometimes they don't even have the title. But you know what? The only thing leaders have, they have followers.
Yep. That's
you
fair.
have people that follow you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you really wear a title called leader?
No. In fact, I avoid that title.
Yeah. But that doesn't mean that there aren't people that follow you and would actually listen to what you have to say and actually, include that in whatever decisions they make, as far as that's concerned. In fact, I bet you mentor people and you support them all the time informally.
You bet.
You actually have followers.
Correct.
That's what makes you a leader.
Correct.
Now, that said, when you see so much out there, it's like, okay, so what would I be able to contribute that's unique? It's the only reason that I'd actually comment on that. So
when I ask, what does O do? What comes to mind? Well, Odoo is a bit of everything. Odoo is a suite of business management software that some people say is like fertilizer because of the way it promotes growth. But some people also say Odoo is like a magic beanstalk because it grows with your company and is also magically affordable. But then again, you could look at Odoo in terms of how its individual software programs are a lot like building blocks. I mean, whatever your business needs, manufacturing, accounting, HR programs, you can build a custom software suite that's perfect for your company. So what is Odoo? Well, I guess Odoo is a bit of everything. Odoo is a fertilizer, magic beanstalk building blocks for business. Yeah, that's it. Which means that Odoo is exactly what every business needs. Learn more and sign up now at odoo.com. That's ODOO.com.
So here's where I went with this thing, okay? As a company grows, you actually do need other people that can support your managers, okay? And the one area that I actually focused on is actually the interaction between managers and their leaders. Okay, so if I had to summarize a manager's role, I got a little summary here. Basically, a manager's job, again, is supporting people to turn their talents into collective performance, okay, that delivers measurable value to a client that they can also generate a profit for the company while growing the people in the process, okay, because there's the three parts to our value exchange. Now, it used to be customer value, my profit, but now it's customer value, my profit, and professional growth for my people.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So all three are actively part of it if we accept the notion of the having rethought the core. Okay. And the way that managers do this is they build teams of knowledge workers with complementary strengths. Okay. In other words, I focus on getting people to work at what they're good at because it's actually far more cost effective for me to do that. If people are working with what they're good at, all of a sudden my costs go down, my profits go up. Okay. The second thing is support the teams of workers. So I build teams based on complementary strengths, and I support the teams to work together so that they achieve the desired results. And instead of being some autocratic or well-intended autocrat, it doesn't matter whether it's well-intended or not, but instead of something, I'm the boss, you're the employee, you need to listen to me. Okay. What I do is I'm accountable for results no more or no less than any other person on that team. So if I'm part of the team, my part may be coordinating and facilitating, as far as that's concerned, but we each have a part on the team. So that means that if you and I are on the same team and I'm the manager, quote unquote, then I have an accountability, but you're just as accountable for the effectiveness of the team as I am. And so are the other people on the team. So I'm accountable, but just as a member of the team. And I have a different role, obviously. The third thing is to foster these people's professional growth. Okay. Both as an individual or as respective individuals, but also foster their growth as a team. So really, my job is to put together teams of people with complementary strengths. Okay. Support the teams to work together so they achieve the desired results, and then foster the professional growth of each individual and the people working together in teams, because it's two different levels of growth. So that's the job of a manager. Now, pretty tall order. Because the truth is that what usually got people to be a manager, as you just referred to and we talked about last time, was their ability as an individual to perform. And of course, your ability as an individual to perform doesn't necessarily translate into these three skills. How do you put together collected teams? I mean, they're different skill sets. That's what makes it such a tall order. So then the question of what does a leader do? Okay. We go to our napkin.
That's right.
And of course, our napkin, you see the picture that we had before where you've got the manager who actually supports the people, and the people are accountable for generating the results. And then he or she actually also operates as an individual, and they generate their own results in addition to supporting the team to develop the larger results. So what's a leader's job? A leader's job is to support the manager in winning. Okay. So I'm going to say, see, I've got 4 different areas of responsibility that I've got listed in the book. One of them is to create and shape a compelling future. Okay. The second thing is to build and strengthen the corporate culture. So those are two more global aspects. A leader, whether it's an owner or whether it's a senior leader. Okay. The third one is to support managers in developing their teams and their team members. And then the fourth one is to develop and grow existing and future leaders. So in other words, grow my managers into leadership roles. So really, I'm supporting the managers in how they develop their people, both individually and collectively as a team, because it's a tall order. And I grow my managers as future leaders. So it's called causing leadership through others. And so, frankly, in the book, I don't even talk about creating and shaping or unfolding a compelling future. I don't even talk about building the corporate culture. There's lots of books on that too. And you know what? A lot of them are really good. So, I actually think they cover those subjects. What I haven't seen covered is how do leaders support managers to grow their people? Because that's where managers struggle.
Yeah, managers struggle. I think leaders also struggle in the fact that is their responsibility, right? I think many leaders forget that, and I love this idea to support managers winning, because that very simply is the job, and I think I've told you this before. I don't do bios. I do a list of things, and I say, you talk about why I'm here based on this list of things. And the bottom one I have is that at his core, Govind likes to help people win. That's what he's all about. No one ever says that one.
Frankly, no one. My opinion. I haven't seen the rest of your list, but you know what? Who cares about the rest?
Exactly. My point is, this is, to me, helping people win is the essence of leadership. That's everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally
So agree. I love the way that you started that. Support the manager in winning, because that's what it's all about, isn't it?
Yep.
And we get wrapped up in vision, right? Creating this future, compelling, vivid. Like, everybody talks about this stuff. It's great. It's great. People talk about, and you're right. There are umpteen books about leaders' role in building and strengthening company culture. Bajillion books among them.
Yep.
But these other two parts are such an important part of leadership, and are the unsexy parts that no one talks about.
That's right.
Because it's heavily based in execution. Yep. It's heavily based in helping people win. And that is day to day, every day.
Yeah. So by supporting a manager's implementation of the development of their people, the leverage of the effort of the leader is huge.
Right.
Because if I'm dealing with 4 different managers or 5 different managers, and they each have 6 to 10 people. Okay. Now, even at 6, that's 30 people. And at 10, that's, we're talking about between 30 and 50 people that I'm dealing with.
Right.
Okay. So in my interactions with a few people, I'm actually supporting a number of people to increase their ability to shape and grow the lives of the people that they support.
Right.
Because you help somebody in their professional growth in their career, so much more is available. And that's kind of cool. And it's not like some, gee, how altruistic, and it is, but let's not kid ourselves. This is as strategic as you get.
No, there's nothing more strategic than helping people win. Yeah. Nothing more strategic in the world.
I promise, you want to watch your bottom line go up? Fastest way to do it is train people so that they can actually take on things at a whole different level. They can actually use good judgment or discernment, and they find balance points as to what makes sense versus what doesn't. What doesn't burn your person out, but at the same time stretches them so that they can grow and they can actually increase their own skills and abilities as far as that's concerned. And even if they don't stay with you forever, and nobody stays with anybody forever these days, but if they don't, as long as they're contributing while they're there, they leave things better off. And I've seen so many situations where people are treated really well, they're grown really well, and they're so appreciative, even when they go to the next opportunity for them, that they become one of the better clients for the company they just left. That happens.
Absolutely. Yeah, that happens all the time.
Yeah. Only if they leave on good terms.
Right. Well, I spoke with a really successful tech entrepreneur today, and he talked about how he he built a company, and he had a huge exit. He had built a company that he wanted to work for, and throughout his career, throughout his building of that company, he is so proud of the number of companies that spun out of his company and in adjacent areas. And he not only supported that, but got them set up, set them up with the council, set them up with the business, and even referred them clients. These are employees that spawn off companies that were in adjacent industries competing with him. And he said, he goes, I just had this abundance mindset to it. And I had this idea that it's not me that wins or them that wins. We win when we win together. It's a triple win and everybody wins. And I just believed that completely. I wanted that, and I only worked with people who wanted that. And if people didn't work with that, I was okay with that. And but this is the way I was going to work. So the people who worked with me also had that mindset. So it was easy to spin them off. We referred them clients that we'd grown out of. It wasn't right for us anymore. So they became right for them. And it was perfect. And so these are people I'm still friends with. This is exactly what you're talking about, right?
You bet. You bet.
So let me ask you a question.
So growing the managers so that they can support the individuals and the teams to work more effectively, that's one half of it.
Right.
Okay. Causing leadership through others, or growing the managers, supporting the managers to grow into leaders is the other half. And that's not about their teams, it's about them.
Yeah.
And those are the two pieces. Like the other pieces, I think that developing the purpose of the company, or some people call it the mission or the vision or whatever you want, very important stuff. Developing the corporate culture, very important stuff. It's just that there's other places that do it just as well or better than I could. So it's like, why would I spend time getting people to read that when it's already out there in really, really good stuff? But this stuff isn't out there. Like you just won't find it.
No, they don't find you don't find it, and people don't talk about it. And I still say it's because it's not as well understood, and execution is just not as sexy. And that's what people get, oh, you don't want to get caught up in the weeds. It's not what it is. It's that you have to be willing to understand this in a different capacity. Now, I asked you a question with regards to managers, and the question was, how many people can a manager manage at a given time? And we related it to the function, one of the core functions of management, right? Weekly one-on-ones.
Yeah.
Let me ask you the same question here. How many managers can a leader lead?
Truth is, I don't actually know.
But you had a definite. Hold on. I want to pause for a second, because you had a definite answer for managers.
Yes, I did. For managers, I absolutely do, because the truth is you need market intelligence, and it has to be a two-way street if you're working on functionally generating results.
Correct.
And so you do that with and through your people, and they need to be in touch with their manager, and their manager needs to be in touch with them every single week, one-on-one, because if I'm getting stuck doing to-dos of the job, applying my trade as an expert, the manager is there to support that. And it's only if they're meeting less frequently than weekly, they're in a situation where the person doesn't rely on their support, and as a result, they don't get the benefit of it. And anything that's less frequent than weekly between a manager and his or her crew turns into checking up on them.
Exactly.
So that happens between a manager and their employees. With a leader to a manager, okay, you could make the argument for the same thing. What I find tends to happen is that when I have more junior managers, they absolutely want that on a weekly basis. What I also get is that because the job of management is so big, some of them try to push that off, and you work with what you got. And I don't talk about between them and their people, because I'm pretty ironclad about that. When I'm supporting people, they have to meet their people one-on-one. Whereas with the manager, we might meet every couple of weeks and we talk about how's it going with this one, or what's it going with that person. And I've seen some situations that they meet weekly. In fact, there was one situation where I was meeting an individual every single day. And for 2 years, I met him Monday through Thursday, 4 o'clock every afternoon, and we went till sometime between 4:30 and 5 every single day. And we were talking about his own sales strategies. We were talking about his development of teams in his organization. And he was heading towards 20 million. He was the president of the company. And frankly, we actually, not only did he triple his sales, and they were already multi-millions in sales that he personally was accountable for, but the other side of it is that he started increasing the effectiveness of the teams that he was working with as far as that side of it's concerned. So that was a very different cadence. And a lot of people, for example, there's probably, 20 people right now in different organizations that I personally am supporting to the tune of anywhere from 1 to 2 hours. Like if it's 2 hours every 2 weeks sometimes, but we'll unpack something strategic in the process, yet at the same time support them. Because here's the thing, when you're growing leaders, when you're causing leadership, it's a completely different conversation. It's almost entirely a strategic conversation. And do you know the biggest problem that leaders have in creating leaders and others? If you had to guess, what's the biggest single problem they have? Biggest impediment that they have difficulty overcoming?
I'm going to say something, and you're going to laugh at it anyway. So why don't you just tell me?
Cool. You're not going to give me, okay, so I'll laugh at your non-answer. They tell too much.
Yeah, I was going to say something like they manage them too much.
Well, they talk. They think that their advice means anything.
Well, I mean
you something, you listen to what I say and you follow it. It was still my idea, not yours. You don't own it. You're not a leader. You just become a great follower. My job is to not tell you anything ever.
Right.
And let you know that I won't be telling you anything ever, but I will actually work with you to help you go through, learn thinking at a whole different level. And it doesn't mean spoon feeding you answers through the side door by giving you questions that sort of drip with the answer.
Yeah.
It's actually giving you a chance to think things through and really just play sounding board for those so that you can develop your facilities at leading in your own way. Because if you let in my way, it's not you, it's me. And so all I've done is I've created some sort of junior clone, and that's not helpful. You need to find your own voice. You need to find your own ways that would actually make a difference. My inputs don't help you. And the only thing that helps you is perspectives I might be able to give you just by asking a few questions or helping you come up with the questions that you would ask yourself. And that's why the weekly thing, checking in with people weekly is great. And I find that, every couple of weeks, it actually works really, really well. And with some people, especially when I was doing a lot of traveling, and I'm now getting back to doing some more again, which is kind of fun, once a month. I'll meet with people for half a day or a full day per month, and we actually tease this out. And then over a 6 to 9 month period, they actually see their ability to grow leadership in others grow. And owners and their managers, it's the same thing.
And one of the things I think is really helpful in that is understanding. First of all, I love what you said. You said it really well, and I was gonna say something similar around leaders manage managers as opposed to lead them, and leading is curiosity, questioning questions, but most importantly, learning what works for this manager is different than what works for this manager, and being flexible in your behavior to be able to meet the manager where they are and not have them come to you where you are. And by that, I mean,
you have to do that.
You cannot compel leadership in anyone when you demand that they come to you for audience in a way that's convenient for you. So I've seen people say, oh, fill out this form, come and see me, and then we'll talk about your one-on-one. That's not working for everybody. Right. And I really like that. The other thing that I wonder about, many leaders are challenged with this, especially when it comes to this idea of supporting managers complete their roles and developing, existing and new leaders, when you're thinking about causing leadership through others, when you're thinking about supporting managers in completing their roles, I think that a lot of people also struggle with the muddiness of people being confused and then coming to you and being in that confused state. Like, I think a lot of leaders are also overwhelmed and they feel frustrated by this lack of ability to solve something quickly. They want something to be solved. If someone's coming to you, people put on that cape and it's like, oh, I feel so good. I'm just going to solve this problem, right? Don't they?
Yep. They actually try that.
Right.
I don't like that doesn't work. So the truth is, see, all you do is you create dependency when you do that. Because if I solve your problem, you'll come to me to get the problem solved rather than build the muscle called thinking independently.
Yeah.
You know, so it's interesting because if I take a look at what do managers need to do to accomplish what they want to accomplish, and as a result, what do leaders need to support them on? First one, obviously, the first one is to master management skills. And really it's facilitating, coordinating, and all that, and working with the day-to-day aspects of the business, but also really being available to give people access to different perspectives. But also, I mean, observations and questions become important to managers too. But I'm going to hit that in a minute. The second thing they have to do is they have to adopt 3 key perspectives. And then the third thing they need to do is to support independent thinking. So there's mastering the management skills, and we have talked about, all that stuff. But the question is, what are those 3 perspectives that managers really need to adopt to master management in a supportive manner, a la ecosystem, as opposed to command and control stuff? And command and control is actually relatively easy. It's not effective, but it's easy. Okay.
Yeah.
Building an ecosystem it's kind of a handful, and it's interesting because one of the key perspective shifts they need to do is people need to operate from a higher altitude and a longer view. You see, because managers interact with people who are doing the day-to-day job, the managers quite often get stuck in thinking from 100 feet up at the highest. Okay. You grow your leadership skills, you really actually need to be able to see how the pieces fit. And you need to be able to see what's coming down the road, because that's part of what the leaders do, as far as that's concerned. And it's the managers have people pulling them down to the day-to-day. So I need to actually learn how to do a both and, because it's not an either or. If I just look from the higher altitude and I'm not available and accessible to my people, it's not working. So I have to actually develop a higher altitude, but I also need both and thinking, not an either or thinking. And
but don't skirt over that both and thinking. What specifically do you mean by both and thinking? Because this is an important point.
One of the people on my team who's a team leader has, let's say she's got 3 people that work with her and she's guiding them along, and she's really having a problem because Billy's being troublesome. And she really needs the help with Billy being troublesome. And I could sit there and just get into the day-to-day about Billy being troublesome, or I could look and say, okay, so I need to support her in her development about Billy because there's something going on here. But the question is, what's the underlying structure that's missing? Have we not set up the relationship in a way that Billy has the opportunity to bring what he brings to the table, and have this manager or team lead? Because if I'm the manager, the team leader is actually saying, I'm really struggling with how to actually get Billy to go. And it's like, okay, well, of course, because you're trying to sort of morph him in what you want him to be, rather than kind of listening for where he can contribute and still get the job done. Like, there's a dance there. And I can't just say, well, he should do what he wants. Well, next thing you know, everybody's doing what they want. Nobody's actually getting the job done. There's parts of the job that you love. There's parts of the job that you hate. And there's the rest of the job is like, and Billy's no different. But if Billy is sort of still developed, what's going on for Billy such that he's not taking on what we need him to take on? Where's he at in understanding him or something like that? And how can I actually support him? Because the truth is, he's a kid that really, really wants to do well. So it's like, okay, so I'll not only look at how to help this manager with her direct reporter, the person that's actually tag teaming with her, I'm also watching and going, how are we taking people on? How are we setting it up so that the team leads and the Billies of the world can actually clear out these issues in advance?
Mm.
In other words, how have we designed it so that they bring into this wall? Is it just a normal occurrence? It could be, or it could be we set it up wrong. And so the question is, how do I need to shift how we set it up? Now, my answer to how this team lead supports Billy might also give me the seeds to how to support the other team leaders in their people, or how do I support the Billies of the world to really grow and evolve their perspectives so that they can see a little bit more of the picture, so that they don't come across as troublesome when they don't intend to be. And again, I don't want to impose some constraining structure, because that's what people will naturally do. Okay. It's more like, how do I think this through and design it a little differently so that it really gives people access to something where these problems just don't show up. And so, I mean, I picked a thorny one because this happens all the time, right? So this is a good chunk of, where people play.
Yeah.
And so it sounds a little nebulous, and I'm listening to myself going, well, that sounds pretty nebulous. But I got to tell you, without going to a specific example of a specific client, a specific situation, this stuff happens all the time. It's all got different faces on it, and each different face, the answer, it's easy to see an answer, but anybody can see it in hindsight. At the face of it, it just feels. And this is one of the things we talked about with teams. Either I've got the wrong people on my team, or people just can't get along. And so this is if I'm a manager and I've got 3 or 4 teams, and each team has a team lead in a second or something, or a team lead in 2 seconds, that's not unusual to see that kind of structure. And so the question is, how does a manager say, okay, well, I've got these 3 team leads, and how do I, think this through so I design the structure so that it really allows the team leads and their people to actually get along really well and really support those people, so that the Billies of the world don't get sort of labeled, or they also don't get left behind, or they don't waste their their talents. And as a result, next thing you know, 9 months from now, they're out of the company. And it's just because somebody didn't understand what they really needed. I dealt with a guy today earlier this morning, where the guy really, it looks like he doesn't fit in the company, like, at all. Well, it turns out the guy's on a scale of 1 to 10, he's like 1 or 1.5 on the autism spectrum. And he's got a lot of social anxiety. And that literally explains away half of the issues that he's facing. Yet he's really good at other things. Like, he can be a really great specialist in a couple of key areas. And one of the people that's working with him could easily support him from that perspective. And so all of a sudden, a guy that looked like he was troublesome or difficult, frankly, it's just got him in the wrong role, and you're different expectations of him than the ones that he can actually absorb. And when somebody's a 1 or a 1.5, you can hardly notice what's going on. And it's not like some psychological evaluation. You can tell when someone's struggling.
Right.
Struggle with something or other. I mean, it just happens to be what he struggles with. But all of a sudden, it's like, boy, would it be silly to force this guy to start managing others, because all we're going to do is create trauma,
Right.
So it's like, how do we set it up so that because the guy's freaking brilliant as well. So it's like, okay, then. But it changes the perspective.
Yeah.
So if as a manager, I'm looking at, okay, so how do I really listen to what's important to people? How do I listen for where the limitations are? And how do I actually support them to really tap those strengths? Because that's the only thing that's going to give me a result. So I know it's a long, convoluted example, but it's an example.
No, it's a great example. And I think that getting really tactical about that's really important. One of the things that I think is really important for most leaders to ask, and they never do, or rarely do unless they're very well trained, is that you before having a conversation with anyone who is struggling, the
Yeah.
first question is, everything okay? It sounds so
Well, I got to
simple.
tell you, you asked this guy that yeah. Why are you asking me? Like
Well, and then you give them some context. It feels
sure.
like you're struggling here about something. Is there something going on that I don't know about? Right?
Yeah.
You open the door
Well,
for someone to have a real conversation. It could be that someone's sick. It could be someone's dying. It could be anything.
yeah.
But you don't know unless you open the door for something that you don't know is it happening. Because if you come across as the heavy in one direction or the other without understanding what's going on for the human being in front of you, you've
Yeah.
lost all collateral with that person to have any kind of trustworthy conversation after that.
Right, which actually it's interesting because we started talking about the higher altitude and the longer view, but what we've gone into is perspective number two, which is very specifically show genuine care for people's growth and prosperity. And you can't care about their growth and prosperity without caring for them as human beings. So what you just said is exactly the core of the second perspective, because managers need to master that. So I can look from the larger picture and see how this impacts all my team leads. And then you have to take it and then turn around and actually look what would really support this person. I mean, in this case,
This person.
this
Yeah.
person, Billy, the
Yeah.
Billys of the world, or my team lead who's supporting Billy. And until managers learn these, like, this is not an easy skill to learn. So when you're actually expecting all these things from your managers, yet at the same time you're in a situation where they're struggling with these interpersonal issues, they need help, you know. And the other side of this, though, is interesting because the third perspective, okay, is to trust the people on the team to figure it out. So a manager doesn't have to dictate things. Manager's job would be to turn around and say, we put together a good team and they really do support each other. And so sometimes what we're going to do is let them figure it out. And they find their own cadence. In fact, the only reason I personally found out about this particular situation I was telling you about, and it's not the woman with Billy, but I talked to one of the people who is a team lead in this particular. Well, he's not a team lead. He's growing into a manager, but he knows about this particular individual, and they already have their cadence and they have figured it out. Nobody else knew about it, but they figured it out. Like, oh, yeah. And he says, we can figure this stuff out. And frankly, when we work together, it actually works really, really well. And so it's like, So rather than trying to figure out what to do about this person, there's nothing to do about this person except to allow them to grow into areas that actually suit their skill set. And then the other thing I said was really support independent thinking. And that's where you stop telling and just observe and ask questions, but have them be open enough questions as opposed to leading questions. And that actually takes care of it. So when I look at leadership, I mean, there's so many aspects to leadership, and there's so many really good books written on it. And I don't see much on how to support a manager to develop people. I don't see much on how to support a manager to develop teams, other than the book that you and I talked about before, Reimagine Teams by Mark Samuel. And I certainly don't see books on how to cause leadership through others. And without supporting independent thinking, it just doesn't happen. So I figured, you know what? Those are the pieces that I'll touch on in this little effort to support.
Yeah, and I think this is a big subject. I think we can have another 10 conversations about this, but I think that's a great place to leave it as we go into the next one.
Okay.
Thank you, Michael.
Welcome.
Wow, what a great conversation. Wrapping up episode 280 with Michael Walsh. First of all, Michael, thank you for laying out a simple, scalable lever. Develop leaders, not just individuals. When you start shifting attention from personal heroics to a people-powered system, you don't just add output, you multiply it. Here are the key takeaways. Separate the jobs. Leadership sets the future state. Management converts capability into performance. Make your calendar reflect that split. Coach the managers. Your highest ROI comes from improving the quality of a manager. Team conversations. weekly one-on-ones, priorities, obstacles, and development. Install operating rhythm. Cadence beats intensity. Quarterly outcomes, weekly check-ins, monthly calibration, and then repeat the quarterly rhythm. Measure the full stack: technical, financial, human, sustainable results. Optimize across all four, not just for revenue. Promote for coaching. Advance the best developers of people, not only top individual performers and producers. You may already notice where a 10% time shift from doing to developing managers would create compounding returns. When you choose one experiment, schedule one recurring 101, and measure one behavior change, momentum follows. If this episode delivered value, follow, subscribe, and drop a quick rating and review. Share it with a leader who's ready to scale through people. And here's your napkin challenge. Grab a napkin and write one leverage point where you'll stop solving as an individual and start developing a leader. Number 2, what's the first experiment you'll run this week? What, who, when, and how you'll measure it. Post it with a pic on #PaperNapkinWisdom so we can learn from your test. And until next time, keep turning clear focus into aligned cadence and decisive action. Because small ideas executed and iterated become big results. Make it a great day.